Hello, I'm Christopher Hellman with National Priorities Project, and the topic of today's budget brief is the deficit. Recent polling data points out that job creation is the #1 concern amongst likely voters in this country. #2 on their list of concerns, however, is cutting federal spending. Why is that? Well, it's because of recent discussions and growing concern about the federal deficit. So just what is the deficit? The deficit is what occurs when the government takes in less money than it actually spends. So they run short in a particular year. The opposite of deficit is surplus, years where they take in more money than they actually spend. Now, looking historically at deficits, going back to World War II, you see an increase in the deficit to fund the war, not surprisingly. And then as we come out of the war, you see economic growth in this country and a return to budget surpluses. Historically, for about the next couple of decades, we see a trend that's sort of like this, with surpluses and deficits running arbitrarily back and forth. And then around about 1970, deficits become the norm. So we see going in here, coming into what we call the Great Society under Lyndon Johnson and the end of the Vietnam War, a return to deficit spending that really never ends. Until we get to the Clinton administration, where all of a sudden we see significant growth in the economy and the first surpluses in over 30 years. This change is short-lived, however, and we return to deficits shortly after that. This around here is where we see the impact of the Bush tax cuts. The economy recovers briefly, and then the economic collapse of 2007, 2008 creates deficits that are unprecedented in recent history, and this is where we find ourselves today. Because of concerns about the deficit, we see changes in the legislative process in the form of the Budget Control Act, which was enacted last year, which requires changes in the way we do spending in an effort to reduce the deficit. And the administration's newest budget proposal for fiscal year 2013 reflects that. The current projected deficit for this year is $1.3 trillion. That's 132 and all these zeros. What the administration projects is a deficit next year of under $1 trillion, about $900 billion, a reduction in the deficit of about 32% over a one-year period. So a significant decline in deficits if the president's budget is enacted as projected. A lot of people are concerned about the deficit. They feel that this is one of the things that we need to deal with immediately. Other people feel that in times of economic downturn, deficit spending in the short term is not really that bad a thing, and that having higher levels of federal spending are important to kickstart the economy. But regardless of how you feel about the deficit, you will certainly be hearing more about it in the weeks and months to come. If you'd like additional information, you should visit our website at nationalpriorities.org.